The man stumbled onto the pavement, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. A group of boys laughed as they ran off, their sneakers slapping the concrete. They didn't even stop to see if he was breathing. Alvin Fairchild, the billionaire, who owned half the buildings in the city, lay still on the sidewalk, his face swollen, his suit torn. It was the first time in years he'd felt helpless and small. From behind a dumpster, two sets of brown eyes watched him. Thin arms wrapped around each other for warmth, the twins huddled in silence. 12-year-old Amelia and her brother, Marcus, hadn't eaten in 2 days. They didn't talk about the hunger anymore. It was always there, like a shadow. Amelia nudged Marcus. "He's not moving. We shouldn't get involved," Marcus muttered. "Last time we did, he's bleeding." Her voice wavered. "What if he dies?" The twins crept closer. Amelia knelt by the man, her tiny hand brushing his shoulder. "Mister?" she whispered. He groaned faintly, his fingers twitching. "We have to do something," Amelia said. Marcus hesitated but nodded. Together, they helped Alvin to his feet, leading him to the nearest bench. His expensive watch caught the moonlight, but the twins didn't notice. They were too busy wondering if he'd make it through the night. Alvin opened his eyes hours later. The cold dawn wrapped around him like a wet blanket. He blinked, confused, as he spotted the two children asleep beside him on the bench. They looked like they hadn't showered in weeks, their clothes hanging off their thin frames. For a moment, he didn't speak. He just stared at them. When Amelia woke up, her instinct was to bolt, but Alvin's voice stopped her. "Wait," he said, his voice hoarse. "What's your name?" "Amelia," she said cautiously. "This is Marcus. You help me," Alvin said, sitting up. His ribs ached, but his mind was clearer now. "Why?" She shrugged. "You looked like you needed it." The simplicity of her answer left him quiet. He didn't say much after that, but when he stood, he offered his hand. "Come with me." The twins didn't trust him at first. People didn't just help you for no reason. But Alvin didn't take them to a mansion. He took them to a modest house in the suburbs where an old woman answered the door. Her face lit up at the sight of Alvin. "Grandma B," Alvin said, his voice softer than they'd heard before. "I need your help." "Of course, dear," B said, ushering them inside. Her kindness was a warmth the twins hadn't felt in years. She fed them, clothed them, and tucked them into real beds that night. Months passed. Alvin visited every week, bringing gifts and checking on the twins. He paid for their school, their clothes, and everything they needed. But he rarely stayed long. Something always seemed to pull him away. One rainy afternoon, the twins found an old box in the attic. It was filled with dusty photo albums, faded letters, and a small, ornate key. The key was unlike anything they'd ever seen. Its surface was smooth and shiny, but the design was intricate, like a puzzle waiting to be solved. "What's this?" Marcus asked B, holding up the key. B froze. For the first time since they'd met her, her smile disappeared. "Where did you find that?" she whispered. "In the attic," Amelia said. "What is it?" B sat down heavily. "It belongs to Alvin," she said after a long pause. "But he hasn't asked for it in years." "What does it open?" Marcus pressed. "A door," B said, to something he thought he'd lost. The twins didn't understand, but B refused to say more. That evening, Alvin arrived soaked from the rain. The twins rushed to meet him, Marcus clutching the key. "We found this," he said. "Grandma B said it's yours." Alvin stared at the key as if it were a ghost. His hand shook as he took it. "Where did you?" His voice broke. "I thought I lost this." "What is it for?" Amelia asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat down, the key gripped tightly in his hand. "Years ago," he began, "I made a mistake. I trusted someone I shouldn't have. They took something from me, something I thought I'd never get back." "What did they take?" Marcus asked. "My brother," Alvin said, his voice barely audible. "This key opens a safe. Inside it are the papers I need to prove he's innocent." The twins exchanged a glance. "You have to do it," Amelia said. "You can't just leave him there." Alvin nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't think I had the strength," he said. "But maybe I do now." The next morning, Alvin took the key and the twins to the city. If you believe in the power of stories to heal, to teach, and to inspire, This is your place. Subscribe now and be part of a community that sees beyond the headlines into the lives that shape them. Together, we'll explore stories that truly matter. I didn't think I had the strength, he said, but maybe I do now. The next morning, Alvin took the key and the twins to the city. Together, they unlocked the safe, retrieving documents that had been hidden for years. With those papers, Alvin began a battle he'd been too afraid to face before, a battle to free his brother from a wrongful conviction. The fight wasn't easy. It took months of legal battles, protests, and public outcry. But through it all, the twins stood by him, their unwavering belief giving him the courage he'd lost long ago. When Alvin's brother finally walked out of the prison gates, Alvin embraced him tightly, tears of relief in his eyes. The twins watched from a distance, their hearts full. They had saved a man who, in turn, had saved another. And that key, it became a symbol of something much bigger, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's always a way to unlock hope. The day Alvin's brother, Daniel, walked free, the city buzzed with whispers. Some admired Alvin for his persistence. Others criticized him for reopening wounds. But to the twins, none of that mattered. They had seen Alvin fight not with money or power, but with heart, and they knew what courage looked like now. Daniel was everything they hadn't expected. Soft-spoken, kind, and humble. He spent hours thanking Alvin, Grandma B, and even the twins, calling them angels in disguise. He'd been in prison for over a decade, and the world was new to him. But he never seemed bitter. Instead, he embraced every moment, every person, as if life itself was a gift. One evening, Alvin sat on the porch with the twins, Daniel beside him. The air was cool, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink. Marcus fiddled with the now empty key, spinning it between his fingers. So, Marcus said, breaking the silence, "What happens now?" Alvin smiled, the kind of smile that carried both relief and weariness. "Now," he said, "we start over." "With what?" Amelia asked, her eyes curious. "With you too," Alvin replied. "I don't want to just be the guy who showed up once in a while with gifts. I want to be family." The twins exchanged a look. "You mean, like, you'd adopt us?" Amelia asked, her voice hesitant. "If you'll have me," Alvin said. "You've already changed my life in ways I didn't think possible. I want to give you a home, not just a place to stay." Amelia's eyes welled up, and she nodded quickly. Marcus tried to play it cool, but the lump in his throat betrayed him. "Yeah," he said, his voice cracking. "I guess that'd be okay." Life didn't magically fix itself overnight. There were still scars to heal, memories to reconcile, and battles to face. But together, they built something solid. Alvin sold some of his shares in his companies to focus on creating opportunities for others. He opened shelters across the city, naming the first One Key House in honor of the twins and the pivotal key that started it all. The twins helped too, Amelia organizing donation drives and Marcus tutoring younger kids who'd never had anyone believe in them. Daniel found his own way, counseling others who'd been wrongfully imprisoned. He became a symbol of resilience, proving that even after years of darkness, the light could still find you. One stormy night, years later, Amelia found herself standing in the same spot where she and Marcus had first seen Alvin bleeding on the ground. The rain soaked her hair, her shoes, but she didn't care. She held the key in her hand, tracing its edges. "Hard to believe, isn't it?" Marcus's voice came from behind her. She turned, smiling. "That everything started here?" "Yeah," he chuckled, shaking his head. "If we hadn't stepped out that night, who knows where we'd be, or where he'd be," Amelia added, thinking of Alvin. They stood there in silence for a while, the rain washing away the years of pain and struggle they had endured. The key, cold and heavy in Amelia's hand, wasn't just a reminder of their journey. It was a symbol of choices, of small, seemingly insignificant decisions that could change everything. When they got home, Alvin was waiting in the doorway, his gray hair damp from the rain. He smiled as they ran up the steps, wrapping them in a warm embrace. "Where were you two?" he asked. "Just remembering," Amelia said, slipping the key into her pocket. "Well," Alvin said, his voice full of the love and pride they'd grown to cherish, Don't stay out too long next time. You know Grandma B worries. The twins laughed, stepping inside. And as the door closed behind them, the key, worn and tarnished but still intact, sat quietly in Amelia's pocket, a constant reminder of the power of hope, family, and second chances. Years passed, and the story of Alvin, Daniel, and the twins became something of a legend in their city. The shelters Alvin had opened grew into a national initiative, and Key House became synonymous with hope and redemption. People from all walks of life came forward, inspired by the story of a billionaire, two brave kids, and a single key that had unlocked more than just a safe. It had unlocked a future for so many. Amelia and Marcus flourished in ways no one had anticipated. Amelia pursued a degree in social work, determined to help children who felt invisible, just as she once had. She spent her days at Key House, organizing programs for homeless youth and building bridges between people who thought they had nothing in common. Marcus, on the other hand, found his passion in law. Inspired by Daniel's wrongful conviction, he worked tirelessly to become a lawyer, specializing in cases of injustice. His determination was fueled by the memory of standing in that cold courtroom as Alvin fought for Daniel's freedom. He swore that no one else would have to wait years for justice if he could help it. One day, while sorting through old belongings in the attic, Amelia found the key again. Its surface was dull. Now, the once polished metal showing signs of wear. She held it in her hand, a flood of memories washing over her. Without hesitation, she called Marcus. "Do you think it's time?" she asked when he answered. "Time for what?" Marcus said, his tone distracted. He was likely buried in legal briefs. "To give him the key," Amelia said softly. "He's done so much for us. Maybe it's time he had this back." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "You think he still needs it?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But maybe he does. Maybe we all do." That evening, the twins sat with Alvin in his study. Daniel was out speaking at a rally, and Grandma B was in the kitchen, humming an old gospel tune. The house was warm, the kind of warmth that only came from years of love and laughter filling its walls. "We wanted to talk to you," Amelia began, her voice steady but nervous. Alvin looked up from the book he was reading. "Is everything okay?" Marcus reached into his pocket, pulling out the key. He placed it on the table between them, its small, unassuming shape almost swallowed by the grandeur of the room. "We think it's time you had this back," Marcus said. Alvin stared at the key, his expression unreadable. For a long time, he didn't speak. Then, with a deep breath, he picked it up, turning it over in his hand. "This key," Alvin said, his voice thick with emotion, "has been through more than I ever thought possible. It brought me back to my brother. It brought me to you. It reminded me that life isn't about what you own but about what you give." He looked at the twins, his eyes glistening. "But it doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to us, all of us. It's a symbol of what we've built together." Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. "So what do we do with it?" Alvin smiled, setting the key gently on the table. "We put it where everyone can see it. Let it remind people that even the smallest things can open doors to something bigger." The key found its home in a glass case at the original Key House shelter, mounted on the wall with a simple plaque that read, "The Key to Hope." May it remind us all that even in our darkest moments, there's always a way forward. People came from all over to see it. Some came for inspiration, others out of curiosity. But every person left with a story in their heart, a story about second chances, courage, and the power of believing in something greater than yourself. And for Alvin, Daniel, Amelia, Marcus, and Grandma B, life continued not perfect, but full of purpose. Together, they proved that family isn't just about blood. It's about the bonds you forge, the lives you touch, and the keys you use to unlock not just doors, but possibilities. The key that started it all had found its final place, but its legacy would never fade. It wasn't just a key anymore. It was a testament to the unyielding strength of love, hope, and the human spirit. Years rolled on, and the legacy of the key spread far beyond what any of them could have imagined. The Key House initiative grew into a nationwide movement, with shelters in every major city. Each shelter carried the same symbol, an image of a small, intricate key, representing hope and change. Amelia and Marcus became well-known names in their fields. Amelia's work in social justice and youth advocacy earned her national recognition, while Marcus became a fierce advocate for justice reform. Together, they often spoke at events, sharing their story to inspire others. But despite their busy lives, they always returned to the original Key House. It was where everything began, and it was where they felt most grounded. One day, Alvin called a family meeting. The twins, Daniel and Grandma B, gathered in the living room, curious about the reason. Alvin stood in front of them, a rare nervousness in his demeanor. "I've been thinking a lot about what we've built," he began, "and I realize it's time to pass the torch." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, leaning forward. Alvin smiled, looking at each of them. "I've spent my life building businesses, solving problems, and trying to make a difference. But the truth is, what we've created here with Key House, with our family, is bigger than me. I want you all to take it forward." Amelia frowned. "You're not leaving, are you?" "Not leaving," Alvin assured her, "just stepping back. You and Marcus have grown into leaders, strong, compassionate, and capable. I want you to carry the vision forward." Daniel nodded, his face soft with understanding. "It's the right time," he said, "but don't think you're getting rid of us that easily. We'll still be around to keep you on your toes." The transition wasn't easy, but it was seamless. Under Amelia and Marcus's leadership, Key House expanded its mission. They introduced programs for education, job training, and mental health support, ensuring that no one was left behind. They partnered with schools, businesses, and community leaders, creating a network of support that transformed countless lives. Alvin, now enjoying a quieter life, watched with pride as the twins carried on his legacy. He spent his days mentoring young entrepreneurs and volunteering at the original Key House, sharing stories with anyone who would listen. One quiet afternoon, many years later, Alvin sat alone in the shelter's common room, gazing at the glass case that held the key. His hair was white now, his frame thinner, but his eyes still held the same determination they had all those years ago. Amelia walked in, now a grown woman with the same fire in her eyes that had driven her as a child. She sat beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You thinking about the past again?" she asked gently. "Always," Alvin said with a soft laugh. "This key, it's funny how something so small could change everything." Amelia nodded. "It wasn't just a key, though. It was all of us. The choices we made, the risks we took." Alvin turned to her, his expression serious. "Never forget that, Amelia. The smallest actions, the moments when you choose to help, to care, to fight, they're the real keys. They're what unlock the future." She smiled, tears brimming in her eyes. "We won't forget, Alvin. I promise." That night, Alvin passed peacefully in his sleep, a content smile on his face. His funeral was a celebration of a life well lived, attended by thousands whose lives he had touched. Amelia and Marcus delivered heartfelt speeches, sharing how Alvin had saved them and in turn, inspired them to save others. The key was brought to the service, placed on a small pedestal beside Alvin's photo. It wasn't just an object anymore, it was a symbol of his life's work, his love, and his legacy. Decades later, the story of the key was still told in classrooms, community centers, and homes. People from all over the world visited the original Key House to see the key that had started it all. Some came seeking hope, others inspiration. But everyone left with the understanding that even the smallest act of kindness could unlock a world of possibility. Amelia and Marcus, now older themselves, continued to lead the movement Alvin had begun. And as they walked through the halls of Key House, watching new generations find their way, they carried the lesson of the key in their hearts. The key, after all, wasn't just about unlocking doors, it was about unlocking potential, unlocking hope, and unlocking the best in all of us. And that, they knew, would never fade. Amelia and Marcus stood together in front of a crowd of young people gathered at the annual Key House Legacy Summit. The event had grown into an international forum for activists, social workers, and community leaders dedicated to the values that Alvin had instilled: compassion, justice, and resilience. As they looked out at the eager faces, Amelia stepped up to the microphone. She held the same key that had started it all, now mounted on a polished wood plaque, its significance preserved for generations. This key, she began, her voice, steady but filled with emotion, reminds us of one truth: that change begins with a single act of kindness. My brother and I were just two kids on the street when Alvin Fairchild found us. He didn't see us as a problem. He saw us as people. That's what we need to do for each other. Marcus stepped forward, taking his place beside her. Alvin taught us that it doesn't take billions of dollars to make a difference. It takes heart. It takes the courage to step in when others step away. And that's what we're asking all of you to do: carry this mission forward. Not just for us, but for the people who need it most. The applause was thunderous, and as the crowd rose to their feet, Amelia and Marcus exchanged a glance. They had come a long way from the frightened children who once huddled behind a dumpster. Now, they were the ones inspiring others to make a difference. After the summit, a young girl approached Amelia. She couldn't have been more than 10, her hair tied back in a frizzy ponytail, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Miss Amelia," she said shyly, holding out a folded piece of paper. "I drew this for you." Amelia unfolded the paper to find a simple drawing of a key surrounded by people holding hands. Written above it in uneven letters was a phrase that brought tears to her eyes: "One key unlocks many hearts." Amelia knelt to the girl's level. "Thank you. This is beautiful. What's your name?" "Leela," the girl said. "I want to help people too, like you." Amelia smiled, her heart swelling. "You already are, Leela. Never stop." Years later, when Amelia and Marcus were no longer leading the organization but mentoring its future leaders, a new project emerged. It was called the Key Initiative, a digital platform that connected people worldwide to share stories of small acts of kindness that had made a big impact. From rescuing stray animals to mentoring struggling students, the stories poured in. Each one was a testament to Alvin's belief that every act, no matter how small, could ripple outward in ways no one could predict. One day, Amelia sat in her quiet office at the original Key House, scrolling through the platform. A particular story caught her eye. A young woman who had found hope at a Key House shelter had gone on to start her own nonprofit to help foster children. At the end of her post, the woman wrote, "If a single key could unlock so much for others, imagine what we can unlock together." Amelia closed her laptop, tears pooling in her eyes. She glanced at the old key on her desk, now encased in glass but still radiating the same quiet power. In the end, the key was never about opening a single door. It was about unlocking endless possibilities within people, within communities, and within the world. Alvin's story, and the twins' story, became woven into a tapestry far larger than any of them could have imagined. And though time passed and new generations took up the mantle, one thing remained constant: the belief that the smallest act of kindness could be the key to something extraordinary. As the years stretched on, the key itself became a universal symbol of hope. People wore small replicas around their necks, hung them in their homes, and carried them in their pockets, not as reminders of the past, but as promises to the future, because sometimes all it takes is one key to change everything. And the world, as Alvin had always believed, would never stop needing people willing to use it. If you believe in the power of stories to heal, to teach, and to inspire, this is your place. Subscribe now and be part of a community that sees beyond the headlines into the lives that shape them. Together, we'll explore stories that truly matter.